A very warm welcome to the Cricket Library podcast. My name is Matt Ellis and it's wonderful to have your company as always. And if you're brand new to the show, it's a very special welcome to you for the very first time tuning in. It's great to have your company as well. And if you are enjoying what you hear in today's conversation, please go back and have a listen to the back catalogue. Plenty of great stories to be told. Kristen Beams, Peter George, Nathan Horitz, Tim Ludeman, plenty of others in that list as well that you may like to go back and have a listen to. And of course, leave a rating and review and hit the subscribe button. That makes things nice and easy for you in the future to find more episodes of the Cricket Library podcast, where our guest today is a man who was a very prolific run scorer across all three formats of the game. His name is Michael Klinger. He played 3 T20 internationals for Australia, a magnificent first-class career and domestic one-day career, not to mention his efforts in the Big Bash competition, a couple of Big Bash titles with the Perth Scorchers, the leading run scorer of all time in the Big Bash when he retired from the game, captaincy at the Redbacks, captaincy at Gloucestershire. There's plenty we can learn from him today in our conversation. A family man as well, 3 children, and really want to check in to see how his wife Cindy is going after her cancer diagnosis a few years back. So keen to check in how things are there. We'll also ask him about his selections for a net session. Who are the 3 people that Michael Klinger would most like to have a net with? We'll ask him about that. We might even get a scoop about his net bowling credentials as well. So plenty to look forward to. Time now to sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with Michael Klinger. It's a very warm welcome to the Cricket Library podcast, Michael Klinger. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Cheers.
We normally start our show by asking, how did your passion for cricket begin? Where did the flame come alive for Michael Klinger as a youngster?
For me, it was watching my older brother. I've got an older brother and an older sister, one 7 years older, one 6 years older than me. And my older brother playing under 12s growing up in Melbourne, and I was 3 or 4 year old back then, and used to just go watch him every Saturday morning. My dad was like a team manager, and back then you had to roll out the mats on concrete, and used to just watch first 3 hours from 8:30 till 11:30 or so on a Saturday morning for the game to be over, and then used to run around with a little bat in my hand and just hit a ball around the boundary line non-stop for 3 hours. So I think just that was my first involvement in cricket, and watching my brother, and then some of the other dads would throw a ball to me and I'd hit it, and you just used to love getting involved with that, and couldn't get a bat and ball out of my hand post that.
And as soon as you were able, you were out there playing club cricket yourself?
Yeah, I played under 12s as an 8-year-old, so I had 3 or 4 seasons at that level. I still remember my first ever game. I was tiny. I wasn't a big kid at all. I was a pretty scrawny, skinny kid, and I was asked to open the batting actually, and I made 8 not out off 25 overs. Just couldn't get the ball much further than 10 or 15 metres away, but it was fun. Like it looked back then, it felt like there were giants bowling to me because as I said, I was a pretty small kid. So that was my first memory of my very first game. And then obviously once I got a bit stronger, the game or the batting side of it became a little bit easier for me. And
you move into pathway cricket as you develop your skills. How was your transition from being a club cricketer to moving into the more serious stuff as a youngster?
It started, it started as going into the under-17 squad for Victoria. There were, I went and started playing club cricket as a 13-year-old at Perth Cricket Club, and then as a 15-year-old made the under-17 Victorian team. And it probably started from there. I didn't have a great carnival. I was actually, when you're a kid, you think it's a be-all and end-all. these carnivals, and I had a really poor under-17s carnival, and came home pretty despondent that, maybe I'm not going to make it. I was only 16 at the time, so you think now looking back on it, some pretty silly thoughts, and really good for me now to be able to pass on to other younger kids at going through their development as well, because it doesn't always have to work straight away. And from then, about 2 months later, I got promoted to, I've made some runs in the second for the Paran, got promoted for the last 2 games of the season in the first grade, and made an unbeaten 120 as a 15-year-old for Paran against St Kilda, which was actually the club I ended up playing majority of my cricket for in Melbourne. But and that just sort of kick-started things. That got me into the it was called the Victoria Institute of Sport, which was the under-19 program back then, and got me involved with the under-19 Victorian setup, and then obviously got picked for that, and then sort of flowed on to Australia under-19s and Cricket Academy based in Adelaide, and that was the flow-on effect for me for all the pathways, and it was probably kick-started by that 100 I got as a 15-year-old in first grade back to Paran.
What are your recollections as a 15-year-old playing with men, and how do you reflect on that and how that developed you as a cricketer?
It's very different. Obviously, you're going to, back then in particular, the way the game was played pretty tough. So as a young 15-year-old, you're going to get picked on, especially early in your innings. So that happened. I remember my first game was against a team called University, and James Sutherland, actually the ex-CEO of Cricket Australia, was bowling for them then. So he called me a few names as well that first game, but all in good heart. I've obviously had a lot of dealings with him since then. But I'm actually coaching his son now, Will, at the Renegades as well. So yeah, but I remember my first game against University, and they had a really strong team. They had James Sutherland, who was a fantastic bowler, Robertson, and a whole lot of other really good bowlers who was a real challenge. And then the next game was a game I got 100 against St Kilda. So probably my biggest memory is getting, I suppose, early in my innings, I wouldn't say attacked, but certainly getting, trying to get put off my game by a lot of the opposition. And then once you, as what happens in any game, once you start to play well and they drop back a bit, and then you try and take full toll of I suppose, your confidence at the time. So, certainly as a young player, you get challenged, and that's good, I think, because I think that brings out a bit of internal toughness in you, and gets you well prepared to play senior men's cricket in the future.
And breaking into the Victorian team, you mentioned you had some time playing Australian under-19s, you had some leadership responsibility there. Did you feel ready for Shield cricket when you got the call up for Victoria? Yeah, I did, because I made my debut in one-day cricket the year before, and it was the last one-day game of the year, and Victoria actually were out of the competition, so it's probably a reason I got an opportunity. Made some runs as well leading into it, but and I got 80 not out against the Tasmanian side, so and in a run chase, so that helped me have confidence at that level. I'd also, at the Cricket Academy back then, when it was based in Adelaide, played in the second 11 competition. So we played from October till pretty much Christmas time. We played almost every week against every state second 11 team. So it was as if you're playing normal second 11 for New South Wales or Victoria, wherever you're from. And I was able to score runs in that competition, which is basically the level underneath state and shield level. So I came in there with some confidence, which certainly helped me. I wasn't getting a whole lot of runs in club cricket, because we were going away for a week, flying home on a Friday, playing Saturday, and then flying out either Saturday night or Sunday morning to whichever state the Cricket Academy were playing next. And I probably, in hindsight, I probably wasn't putting my full attention into the club cricket for that 2 or 3 month period. But because I was scoring runs in what essentially was a second 11 competition, that's how I got picked to play for Victoria. And what are your early memories of that first few years of playing Shield cricket in Victoria? Who were some of the key people that kind of took you under their wing and made you feel welcome there at Victoria?
Yeah, my first ever Shield game was in New South Wales, and I actually wasn't meant to be playing, and a batsman called Laurie Harper hurt his back in the warm-up. So Paul Rifle, who was captain at the time, came up to me and said, in the warm-up, and said, "You're in." So my family and everyone was obviously back in Melbourne and didn't know until pretty much the start of play. So that was how it all came about. There were some big names in that squad. There was Paul Rifle was captain. Shane Warne came back every now and then to play, obviously with his international duty, and back then it was when he had a couple of his shoulder operations. Darren Berry was a key figure as wicketkeeper behind the stumps. Matthew Elliott, Jason Armberger was a fantastic opening batsman and partner with Matthew Elliott. So some big names around, and I suppose that the ones who took me under the wing a bit were Matthew Mott, who's now the Australian women's coach. He moved over from Queensland around the same time that I first sort of got into the state squad, and I'm really grateful, I suppose, for him. As I said, he made me feel extremely comfortable in the group, along with a number of other people. But certainly coming in as a young guy, you seem to gravitate to some of the other younger guys. But it was always nice, I felt, having one or two of the senior guys, whether it's just inviting for coffee after training or a sandwich or whatever it is, or if you're going on an away trip, making sure they include you in dinners and or have a beer, whatever it is. So for that, I'm extremely grateful of those guys who certainly went out of their way and really made me feel, when I became that senior member, something that I thought I really needed to continue with a lot of the young guys. So throughout my playing days, I tried to make sure I went out of my way to making sure we as a leader of the group, welcomed every young player, every new player into the team, and made sure they felt included, made sure they were never left alone, for dinners on their own, interstate trips, but they always were invited to come with the majority of the group. So I always thought that was really important to embrace that in terms of building that team culture going forward, and lessons I learned from some players doing it to me when I first started.
Yeah, it sounds like an excellent blueprint for building a culture in a cricketing environment. Now, I have to ask you about the 2001 season. You're playing Tasmania. Things are looking good day one. You're 3 for 290 at stumps. You're on 36 not out. The rest of the game, there's a big talking point here, and you're the only Australian first-class cricketer to have ever had someone call the boys in and a declaration is made when you're on 99 not out. Victoria 5 for 393. Paul Rifle wanted 4 overs at Tasmania before lunch. Can you tell us your reflections on that experience and just how that was for you as a young player who hadn't at that point made a first-class 100?
Yeah, it's amazing how many times I get asked this question or this scenario. But to be honest, right at the exact moment or at that time, it didn't bother me all that much. I was just loving playing cricket, interstate cricket, loving playing for Victoria. I made 99 not out. Like in terms of I made runs, I was happy I was performing and contributing to the team. Once it sort of sunk in a little bit, and I suppose seeing some of the other players' reactions, both in my team and the Tasmanian team, sort of started to feel like it was more of a bigger deal than I probably thought again right at that specific time.
Yep.
I was on strike the next over, so I would have literally taken potentially, another 30 seconds or a minute to get there. But it was, I was scoring really quickly that first session, and so we were, as I said, like in an hour, 40 minutes, scored probably 70 runs or so. And we knew we were going to either declare, either side of the break, and they were desperate to have a few overs at them before lunch. And the way it worked out, I couldn't get on strike the over before. Darren Berry was batting at the other end and couldn't get off strike. We didn't know exactly which over they were going to call it. We knew there'd probably be some time to have a short hit out before lunch, and then just the way it happened, it ended up being on 99 when that was the case. So. Which again, looking back on it, I didn't get my first 100 till 4 years later. So that that was it would have been obviously nice in hindsight, but that was probably my own fault not performing well enough for the next 4 years to do that anyway. So Paul. I mean, Paul's been an umpire. I've had him heaps of times as an umpire since, and he's probably given me a few scraps. I reckon I've been hit on the shin a few times in front of middle, maybe not out a couple of times to maybe just stir it up. But yeah, we still get along fine. And he kept obviously captaining for a year or so after that. So he was a fantastic bowler. I used to field at third slip or gully to him, and used to fill in the game all the time.
Now, moving on to that first 100, if I've got my facts right here, it's against Tasmania, and Tasmania bat first, make 347. You guys get rolled for 160 odd, and then you're asked to follow on. And I think you were opening the batting. Can you talk us through that experience, the pressure of following on, and the relief of making that first 100?
Yeah, I think for me, I was in and out of the team for the following few years, and so to come in and cement my spot and feel comfortable that I'm contributing to the team, that was the biggest thing with that 100. But the game before that, I think I got 80 or so not out in a run chase against South Australia, and then followed it up with that. So it was more just feeling comfortable, I suppose, in my own skin in a team of a very good team with some big name players playing in that squad. So that was certainly the main part of it. I remember facing guys like Adam Griffith, who then ended up being the assistant coach in WA in the Perth Scorchers, and ended up playing there. And so I think Watson played potentially that game as well. So I remember it clearly, but it was not so much about making 100, it's more just about cementing my spot in the team then. And that's what for me certainly felt the best part of it anyway. And
you have a couple more years at Victoria. What brought about the change of scenery, the move to Adelaide for 08-09?
Yeah, so I was a regular in the Victorian one-day team over the previous 4 or 5 years, and performed really well through that period in short format cricket. But I was in and out of the Shield team, and to be honest, a lot of that was my own fault for not being a consistent enough run scorer and cementing my spot regularly in the team. There were times where I was scoring runs, and then there were guys like Brad Hodge, Dave Hussey, Cameron White coming in and out of the Australian team. So there were times where I was scoring runs, but then to fit those 3 guys in, naturally I was the one left out because they weren't going to leave out a Matthew Elliott, a Jason Armberg, guys who were performing, who were long-term performers and consistent performers for Victoria. So, which I totally understood, but it's just the way it worked out. So I really wanted to obviously be a long-term, sustainable first-class cricket and potentially have opportunities to play for Australia down the track. So I had an opportunity at the end of that year. I was still under contract for the following season. In South Australia, Rod Marsh was the director of cricket there at the time, and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming over. And after thinking about it for a while, it actually all happened within the same week of when I married Kitty, my wife. It was all going on. It was all pretty hectic week there when it was all happening. I flew over to Adelaide to meet some of the staff and see the facilities, and then got married with all in the same week and had to make a decision. So it was all happening pretty quickly. I think Victoria were at the same time were trying to recruit Chris Rogers, so it probably worked out for both parties. They were able to get him. Me leaving obviously opened up a free spot for Chris to come in and allowed me to go and make a fresh start. So that's how it all eventuated. We left on good terms back then. Greg Shippard was coach at the time, Sean Graff, general manager, who's still general manager now. So there's certainly no ill feelings, but it gave certainly me a new lease on life, moving to South Australia to a team that had probably underperformed for a while, but also gave me an opportunity to cement a spot at the top of the order.
And some success there, over 1,200 runs in your first season, a big double 100, averaging 70 plus, and then another double 100 the next year. the T20 title as captain, 2010, 2011, the Ryobi Cup, 2011-12. So taking on the leadership there at the Redbacks, any reflections on that as an opportunity to use some of those leadership skills?
Yeah, when I moved over to Adelaide, I certainly had no intention of captaining or leading the team. It was purely just to get an opportunity. And then a couple of years in, I got a call. Actually, I was on holiday with my wife up north in Port Douglas, and in April, May, and I got a call from Jamie Cox, who was the head of cricket at the time, and just asked if I'd be interested in looking to make a change, and asked if I'd be interested in. So I sort of took a few days to think about it, and decided that I'd give it a go. And that were the two of the most fun years of cricket I've had. I think South Australia at the time, the Redbacks hadn't won anything for quite a long time, and to win 2 titles and to go to a Champions League, 2 Champions League actually, but one in South Africa where people didn't think we'd have a chance, and we made a semi-final. We beat Mumbai Indians and Bangalore in the space of 3 days in Durban, which was unbelievable, playing against the stars of the game with a bunch of state cricketers. The only big name we had really was Sean Tate at the time playing for us. So that was those 2 years in South Australia was amazing, and I think it really helped me grow as a leader because we were a very young team. We had a couple of experienced guys, so it helped me in terms of management, how to manage some of the senior guys. And I feel that, and I still feel today, when you're in leading positions, whether it's coaching or in management, you really need to be flexible, and it's not one way for everyone. You need to be flexible in the way you deal with some of the more experienced guys and some of the more younger guys, and that really, I believe, brings it in a culture where guys can excel individually, which will eventually obviously lead into more success as a team. So it taught me a lot those couple of years, and certainly 2 years of the most fun I've had playing cricket. And
that time, do you feel the learning lessons that you had there with the winning culture that you had at the Redbacks, going over to Gloucestershire in 2013 and taking on leadership responsibility over there, were there any differences in doing it in a different part of the world with a different group of people?
Yeah, there was. And the main difference was I had to walk into a dressing room where I didn't know anyone and had to be their captain and leave them a week later.
Wow.
So that was probably the biggest difference. And I owe a lot of credit to John Bracewell, who's ex-New Zealand player and coach, who was coaching Gloucestershire at the time. And I remember clearly he picked me up from the airport when I first arrived in London. It was a 2-hour drive to get over to Bristol, where Gloucestershire's based. And his wife picked up my wife, and I had 2 kids at the time in one car, and I drove with a luggage van with all our luggage, just with John. And he just said in that car drive over, and he just said, I want you to take charge of the dressing room. He said, I'll take care of a bit of the backroom stuff in terms of board and that sort of stuff. So I basically want you to run the club and run the dressing room the way you like it. And he just gave me free rein. And the way I went about it was just it's very hard to get that mutual respect with players straight away when they don't know you. So the first week or two, all I spent time on was actually spending time individually with the guys, whether it's going for a coffee or a beer or just getting to know them. So when you do challenge them, there's that mutual respect there that you can do that without I suppose them getting their tail up about it. So for me to be able to get that mutual respect early was really important, and that was probably the biggest challenge I had in my career. That was a team who finished bottom for a few years leading into that. They hadn't had a lot of success for a while. We had a really young team, except for 1 or 2 senior guys, and my 7 years there, it was enjoyable. I love playing cricket over there, but in that 7 years, we won a one-day title, which when you think about it, over there is there's 18 teams in a competition with not the same salary cap. So we were the second lowest budget team over there.
Wow.
We played a final against Surrey, who I think salary cap wise, they paid their players something like 4 times the amount of what our club was was able to play our players and to beat them in a final with huge names. You had Jason Roy, Sangakkara, and a whole lot of other names, English players. At Lords was one of the best moments of my career. I watched it actually, I think it was the anniversary of that was, they showed a video the other day on social media, and just bring back some of those memories was unbelievable. So, and they just eventually got put up into Division 1, promoted Division 1 last year. So to be there for 7 years, last year was my last season playing T20 cricket, but to be there for 7 years and see the progression, mainly of the young guys. When I went there, most of the group were between 18 and 21, and now they're 25, 26. To see them mature as people, but also to actually see how their cricket improved, and now they're established, senior members of the team. So that was certainly something I'm extremely proud of, being able to help that club progress, and hopefully now they'll be able to maintain that going forward.
And your time in WA, you had a good run there at South Australia. What was your feelings moving west for the 2014-15 summer? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so the end of the season the year before, I had an end of season review meeting with Darren Berry, who was the coach at the time, Jamie Cox, the director of cricket, and a few of the other assistants, and they just said to me, it was quite good. They were honest and upfront. They said, going forward, you'd be number one pick in all our short format cricket, but potentially we may move on to some of the younger guys in shield cricket. And I understood it. Obviously, it's their prerogative to make those calls, and certainly understood. Didn't agree, but I suppose I understood, because I'd had a decent season. I made a double 100 the second last game of the shield season. So in terms of performing well, I didn't quite understand why they were going that direction, but I just said I'll go over to the UK, hope to perform well over there, come back, perform well in the one-day team, and force my way back into the Shield team. And went over to the UK a few days later, and about a week later, Justin Langer called me up while I was over in Bristol, and he just said to me, listen, he said, Marcus North has retired unexpectedly. He had a really good season, probably his best ever Shield season the year before, and we're really after some leaders. We've got Adam Boges, who's our captain, Michael Hogan, who's a senior bowler, and the rest of the guys are really young. Very similar to probably what I've been through in Gloucestershire a few years earlier than that. He just said, we'd love to have you over. He said, I don't even care if you make runs or not. We just want you to be good around the group and lead the team. And in hindsight now, knowing Justin really well, he probably said that deliberately to take the pressure off me.
Yep.
In that way. And it was for me, from a family lifestyle point of view and a cricket point of view, it was the best move I've ever made, because my family loved it over in Perth. My kids grew up, going to school there. The lifestyle there was amazing. And the WACA, I couldn't speak more highly of them, how they were as a professional outfit, but also, we had a couple of tough periods there with my wife's health, and which we eventually, with the WACA, in terms of their support, in particular Justin and Ben Oliver, who was the director of cricket at the time, their support and all the staff and players through that period for me was amazing, especially with no family there. Obviously, all our family is based in Melbourne, so that move to Perth for us was, 5 years that we'll never forget, and certainly have a huge soft spot for the WACA and the Perth Scorchers. And
your on-field performances, again, straight away, your year going to South Australia, 1,200 plus runs, going to WA, over 1,000 runs for the season, 400s, 3 half centuries, another good year the following year, a couple of Big Bash titles. And it sounds like the off-field support that you had was tremendous. Can you tell us how things are going now with your family and your wife's health situation?
Yeah. Cindy's she's doing really well. Obviously, the first diagnosis was back December 2017. It was 5 or 6 days before that Big Bash started that season. But yeah, she's doing well. She's back to living normal lifestyle, and at the moment she's very busy homeschooling our kids with online learning, so that's keeping her very busy. But yeah, health-wise, she's doing well. Obviously, you got the regular checkups as you do on all these situations with a her breast cancer. But she's going well, back to normal lifestyle, and we're enjoying being around family in Melbourne. It's helped a lot, I think, for us. And even though, as I said, we did love the lifestyle in Perth, but we'll see what happens going forward with all that. But certainly in terms of Cindy, she's doing fantastically well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's outstanding to hear. I know it was a very emotional time. You wrote a letter, a public letter at the time, and I know lots of us just really feeling for you. Myself as a dad with 3 kids, I just couldn't imagine having that kind of situation to deal with, and it's really glad to hear that things look like they're on a good trajectory. With the Big Bash, 2 Big Bash titles. One of the more exciting ones down in Canberra, where Brett Lee nearly creates a miracle for the Sixers, and the other one a bit more of a cruise to victory. You make 71 not out off 49 balls, and the Scorchers win against the Sixers again, 1 wicket down. Any reflections on those 2 Big Bash campaigns and titles?
Yeah, I think the main reflection with those 2 titles is I don't know the exact stats, but I'm pretty sure we lost at least the first game in both of them, possibly even in one of them too, first 2. And what I noticed looking back on it, and now coaching with the Renegades, we didn't obviously have a great start last year, but we just never panicked. We knew we had a really simple game plan and a game plan that stood up regularly. So we just made sure that we stuck to that, and we didn't take the foot off in terms of our training. If anything, one of Justin's mantras is to have a really hard work ethic and keep training, and we continued to do that. And you've got to remember, in Perth, that time of year, it's 35, 40 degrees every day. So when you're doing your fitness on top of your skill work, it's really hard work. But what it actually did, it made us really good at the back end of each tournament.
Yeah,
I feel, because I think we were stronger and fitter than any other team. And as well with that, I think 95% of our guys were all Western Australian, part of the WACA system. So that training is not only for the 6 to 8 weeks; it's for 12 months of the year. So I think if you look at the way we went about the second half of our seasons in those years was really strong, and it had to do a lot with, I think, our strength and fitness, as well as our mental strength, knowing that we had the work put in before that. And as I said, we didn't complicate anything. We knew we had a really strong bowling attack, and we had probably, I'd say, some senior batsmen with a couple of real explosive guys who could take the game apart, that we knew we'd be able to get the job done more than not, and just kept it simple and got it done for a couple of years there.
Now, you must have felt at times in your career you were pretty close to getting selected for Australia, be it Test cricket, be it one-day international cricket. That opportunity doesn't come, but something that does come in 2017 is the call up to play T20 international cricket for Australia. How much did that mean to you? It's almost like the collective cricket community breathed a sigh of relief that you finally had that opportunity. Like we could see the numbers and see the performances over the years, and I think particularly that year where Adam Voges was the leading run scorer, 14-15 at WA, and you had a big year there as well. I think you were second on the list. There must have been a time where you were very, very close. So to actually get the call up in 2017 to play those T20 internationals, can you explain the emotion around that?
Yeah, well, I think that year that Adam Voges had a fantastic season, and I also had a really good year. And then Vogie deserved his selection and performed fantastically well for Australia. But there were quite a few openings over that 12 to 18 months in Test cricket, and the feedback I got was probably, and it wasn't directly from the selectors, it was sort of through other people, that they were probably didn't really want the perception of a 30, Vogie I think was 36, I was 35, having 2 guys 35 plus in the same team. So they actually went for a couple of younger guys for that reason. So I suppose that was a little bit disappointing, but there was, I mean, as I said before, there were times early in my career where, you always think you could do more that may have pushed that case going forward. But to get that opportunity, as you mentioned, to play for Australia was unbelievable. Think about it, 17 years. I mean, I think the average sort of span for a cricketer is sort of 4 to 6 years, and I was lucky to do it for 20, but 17 years of hard work aiming to play for Australia, to be able to get that opportunity was really humbling. And not only to be honest, it wasn't even for myself. It was more for family and friends who supported me the whole way. I've actually felt happier for them than personally. Like, it was obviously great for me to be able to achieve that after such a long time. But when you think about all the people who support you along the way, whether it's my parents, my dad, my late mum, my brother and sisters and cousins and close friends who I grew up at school with, just people who support you on the way. And I think it actually made them really happy and satisfied. So for me, that was probably the biggest part of it. And luckily, the first game happened to be at the MCG, even though I was living in Perth at the time. But all my family was obviously based in Melbourne, my school friends who I grew up with. So it gave them an opportunity to come to my debut game for Australia. So it worked out really well from that sense. And it was just I suppose a tick I could give myself at the end of my career that yes, I achieved it and played pretty well too. So I think just to know I was able to play well at that level, it sort of left a bit of an empty spot because you wanted more. And I knew, even though I performed really well that series, the reason I got a game was because Smith and Warner were rested during that series. So that was probably the main reason I got an opportunity there. Yeah. So in saying that, I knew they were going to come back in most likely for the next series. So even though I played well, I probably wasn't going to get another opportunity at my age. So I really just enjoyed those 3 games. I didn't put any pressure on myself and just went to have fun. My family followed me around to all the games in Melbourne, Geelong and Adelaide. And it was just a great experience and one I'll never forget.
Yeah, absolutely. It's outstanding. So glad you had that opportunity. And now you're a coach. You've transitioned from being a player into the Melbourne Renegades. How's that transition been for you? And what are your future plans? What are your aspirations, life after playing cricket?
Yeah, the good thing was I enjoyed it, and we didn't have a fantastic season, so that's probably a good start. But the last part of my career, I was really determined to upskill myself in 2 areas, and one was coaching, and the other was management. So I did a master's in business and sport management, which I did while I was playing cricket. 365 days a year, really, playing over in England and Australia. So to be able to finish that was something I was proud of, to get the master's done and then upskill myself from a coaching side of things, whether it was coaching and then specialist coaching over in England at Gloucestershire, but also doing the level 3 high performance course back in Australia, and then seeing where it took me at the end of my career. And as of now, more opportunities have come up in coaching, and to get an opportunity to coach a Big Bash team, as a fairly inexperienced coach, although I was running the T20 part of the team over in Gloucestershire for the last 2 or 3 years, it was a great opportunity, and now to be given another 2 years at that is something I'm really grateful for. And now, I only came in that role about 3 weeks before the season, so I didn't have really control over in terms of the list and the way we wanted to go about it. So now it's given me more time to actually run that program the way I'd like to, although now with all this uncertainty with COVID-19, things are going to change a fair bit too. But that's certainly a great opportunity for me now. Long term, I'm not sure. I've really, as I said, I really enjoyed coaching. I'd love to potentially be able to coach a state team or over in the UK and be a full-time coach. But I'm also keeping open the idea of moving into the management side of things as well, whether that's high-performance management or a head of cricket type role somewhere as well. So it certainly need to leave both doors open until I suppose I find the right role that's going to be for me long-term. But coaching certainly something I'm enjoying and would love to be a full-time coach if things can work out that way.
Yeah, sounds like a great path ahead for you. Now, we finish off our chat with all of our guests and we ask them this question. I'm sorry I haven't prepped you on this. We ask, who are the 3 people you would most like to have a net session with? They could be cricketers, they could be celebrities, they could be alive, they could be no longer with us. Who do you reckon you'd love an hour with in the nets? Your top 3 picks for a net.
I'm not going to say Justin Lane because he'd make me run a lot, and I'm past all that stage now. Otherwise, yeah. So I grew up. I grew up loving Dean Jones as a Victorian. He was someone who, he had posters on the wall, and I've been lucky to do a couple of sessions with him. He was a consultant batting coach in South Australia. He wasn't that happy, I don't think, when I got the Renegades coaching role to come out in the last few weeks. But he probably doesn't know that he was my hero growing up either. So that's a bit of an interesting one. But he's someone, as I said, I grew up watching, and would, if you had to choose someone who's my idol growing up, it would certainly be him. There was my private coach growing up, and no one would know him, but his name's Joey Silver, and he did hours and hours and hours of batting with me, whether it was just in a synthetic net outdoors or in an indoor centre somewhere. And he was someone who really helped my game flourish and probably helped my game stand up at senior level, at Shield level, and that's something I'll be forever grateful for. And you put me on the spot here, but I'd probably have to say someone like a Ricky Ponting, and again, someone who I grew up with. And when I was playing well at state level and he was still playing, I was just, one of the reasons I really wanted to play was I could play with him. I used to love watching him play, love the way he went about it. I heard fantastic things about him as captain of Australia, like we spoke earlier, in terms of really young people coming through, young cricketers coming through into the Australian team. He should take under their wing and making sure he always involved them in grabbing a beer or grabbing a coffee and or a meal, whatever it was. So he was someone who, when I started to hear those things as a state cricketer about how good he was as a leader and how he embraced all the young guys coming through, someone I would have loved to have played with, but obviously never got the opportunity to do so.
How do you reckon you'd go bowling to him in the nets? What's your net bowling like?
I reckon I've been voted in the past as the worst bowler ever in state cricket. So my bowling's pretty ordinary. I can throw him well, and I can throw good offies. Yeah. But my bowling in the net certainly isn't quite up to scratch. I bowled one over in Shield cricket. It was on day 4 in a game in Hobart, and the rain was 2 minutes away from coming in, the game being called off, and Graham Manu was the captain at South Australia, and George Bailey was batting, so he asked me to come on and bowl an over, and then you could see the clouds coming in, and Bailey was pretty scared, I think, just not to get out. I bowled him one half tracker, hit the 4, and the rest he just patted back to me. So, and then literally as the over finished, it started pouring rain, and the game was over. It was called a draw. So I'm thankful to Graham Manu for giving me that one over. Anyway.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Michael. I really appreciate you giving us your time. Wish you all the best with the family. Great to hear things are going well there, and look forward to seeing your career progress in the future.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
A massive thanks to Michael Klinger for being our guest on the Cricket Library podcast for this edition. Wonderful to hear about his cricketing journey and some great insights, wasn't there, on leadership around the group that he had at South Australia when he captained them to that T20 victory, and then of course the time in the Champions League where his young Redbacks side did so well over there, beating some IPL teams. The Ryobi Cup win for South Australia as well. Taking some of those lessons, I guess, from his time in the Victorian setup and the good things that happened there and the way he was treated as a young player coming in has transferred into the way he's been able to lead and set cultures in the environments that he's been involved in. Gloucestershire, another great example of that, going over there and building a group from scratch without them really knowing who he was, and building those relationships with the players on and off the field, and getting that title there, the big one, the Royal London Cup at Lords in 2015, a magnificent achievement for that group. His Big Bash success, of course, speaks for itself. Prolific run scorer in the Big Bash competition, and hearing about the elation of getting selected, finally getting that opportunity to represent Australia in the T20s, and how it worked out that his family could be there. So good to hear, and really good to hear that things are progressing well with his wife and kids at the moment after the health scare that they had a few years back. So things sound like they're tracking really well for Michael Klinger, and I really appreciate him sharing with us on the podcast today. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to leave a review. We've got some great chats coming up in the coming weeks, just like this one with Michael Klinger, and we very much look forward to your company again next time. This has been Matt Ellis for the Cricket Library podcast. Bye for now.